before you scroll past this, I need you to stay with me for the next few minutes, because what I'm going to share with you today might be the thing you've been missing your entire life. Not a line, not a tactic, not some hack you read in a forum at 2 a.m. I'm talking about something that has been happening in conversations you've already had, something that was already there, in the air, between the two of you, and you walked away not knowing what it meant. Or worse, you felt it, you got nervous, and you pulled back at exactly the wrong moment. Here's what nobody told you, and what almost every man over 50 gets completely wrong. When a woman touches you during a conversation, in specific places, in specific ways, at specific moments, she is not being friendly. She is not being polite. She is not being unconsciously clumsy. She is making a decision about you. And that decision, made in the space of a second, in a single physical movement she herself probably doesn't fully understand, is one of the clearest signals the human body is capable of sending. The problem is this: most men misread it, dismiss it, or, and this is the one that costs them the most, they feel it and they retreat. They get anxious. They get in their heads. They wonder if they're imagining it. And by the time they've finished that internal conversation, the moment is gone, and she has quietly registered that this man is not present. This man doesn't hold his ground. This man doesn't receive. And she moves on, not dramatically, not with a scene. She just adjusts. The door that was open closes, and she can't even fully explain why. I've spent years in conversations with women, across ages, across backgrounds, across the full emotional range of what it means to be human. And one of the things that comes up again and again is this: the men who made us feel the most is the ones who received us, who didn't flinch, who didn't overthink, who were just there. Today, I'm going to show you 9 specific places a woman touches during conversation, what each one means at the psychological and biological level, and, most importantly, what you should do with that information in the moment. Not as technique, as awareness. Because when you understand what's actually happening, you stop reacting from anxiety and start responding from presence. We'll get to all 9. But the one that surprises men the most, the one that generates the most comments every time I bring it up, is number 6. Stay for it. Picture this. You're mid-conversation. You've just said something. Maybe it made her laugh. Maybe you shared a point of view she didn't expect. And her hand comes out and rests on your forearm for 2 seconds, maybe 3. Then it's gone. Most men think she's just being expressive. Women gesture when they talk. It's nothing. Here's what it actually is. Dr. Tiffany Field, director of the Touch Research Institute at the University of Miami, has spent decades documenting what human touch communicates beneath the level of conscious speech. Her research consistently shows that intentional touch that makes contact and holds, even briefly, signals something the brain cannot fake: safety selection. When a woman initiates touch on a man's forearm, she is marking him, at a level below her own awareness, as a safe presence. Her nervous system has run its assessment and returned a verdict. You passed. The forearm is not an intimate zone. That's the point. It's accessible, socially acceptable. And precisely because of that, it's the first bridge. Women rarely touch men they are indifferent to, even there. And the ones who are moving toward you will touch you there before anywhere else. What the anxious man does: he stiffens. His arm goes rigid. He may even pull it away slightly. His body language communicates, "I received that, and it made me uncomfortable." She registers this not as modesty, but as rejection. What the grounded man does: nothing dramatic. He doesn't lean in aggressively. He doesn't make a comment about the touch. He just continues. He stays in the conversation. He receives it without making it a production. and something in his stillness, his capacity to be touched without flinching, signals back to her. I can hold this. I can hold you. The forearm touch is not the destination. It's the first question. And your answer is written in your body, not your words. She's not testing your interest. She's testing your ground. The shoulder touch is different from the forearm touch in one critical way. It requires proximity. To touch someone's shoulder, you have to lean in. You have to close the physical gap deliberately. This is not accidental. Think about a moment like this. You're at a table, she's next to you, you're both watching something, or you're standing in a group, and the group shifts, and suddenly she's at your shoulder, and then her hand comes to rest there. Not a pat, a rest, contact that holds. What most men think, she's comfortable with me. We're friends. The friendship interpretation is the trap. Comfort is real, but comfort and attraction are not opposites. They are, in the psychology of women who are genuinely interested in a man, the same current. Women don't pursue comfort with men they're indifferent to. They pursue distance. They turn their body away. They keep their hands in their own space. The moment a woman's body starts moving toward yours, leaning in, closing gaps, making contact, she is not acting friendly. She is acting from attraction that has already made its decision. Research from the journal Evolutionary Behavioral Sciences found that women use proximity-based touch that requires them to close physical distance, as one of the most reliable early-stage signals of romantic interest. Men, in studies, consistently underestimate the significance of these signals, interpreting them at the lower end of the emotional register. This mismatch is the gap where connections are lost. The shoulder touch often comes with a lean. Her face comes toward you. You may hear her more quietly, which means she's speaking for you alone, not the room. This is intimacy in its early architecture, private speech inside a public space. What breaks it? You make a joke, you turn to address the group, you treat the moment as ordinary. She receives the message. What builds it? You meet the lean with your own stillness. You stay present. You let the private bubble exist without popping it. She built a room for two inside the room full of everyone. Most men walk out of it without knowing they were ever inside. This one is rarely discussed, and it's one of the most significant. The wrist is a vulnerable part of the body. Anatomically, it's where the pulse lives. In the language of the nervous system, exposing and offering the inner wrist is a gesture of openness. The body is turning its softness toward you rather than its armored exterior. When a woman takes your wrist, to show you something on your watch, to turn your hand over, to guide your attention, pay very close attention to how she does it. If she wraps her fingers around it and holds for a moment before releasing, if the grip is gentle and deliberate, if her thumb touches the inside of your wrist, that is not a functional gesture. That is contact that had a destination. James, 61, came to me after a situation he'd been replaying for weeks. He was at dinner with a woman he'd been seeing casually for a month. She reached across the table, took his wrist in both hands, and asked to see his watch. But she held it for what felt like a long time. He described it as one of the most charged moments of the evening. And then he said, I kind of pulled my arm back after a few seconds because I thought it was getting weird. It wasn't getting weird. It was getting real. And his retreat read to her as discomfort with her initiative. They went on a few more dates, but she told a mutual friend later that she'd felt something shift that night. She couldn't explain what. Dr. David Buss, evolutionary psychologist at the University of Texas, has documented how women's touch behaviors during early courtship phases serve as an assessment mechanism. They are testing how the man receives closeness, whether he can stay present under intimacy, whether his body language communicates security or anxiety. The wrist hold is one of those tests. It's not a test she designed consciously. Her nervous system designed it, and your nervous system answers. The woman who takes your wrist is not checking the time. She's checking if you're real. Before we go further, if you're finding this useful, there's a complete guide on reading female body language in longer conversations pinned in the first comment below. It goes deeper than anything I can cover in a single video, and a lot of men have told me it changed how they show up in those early moments completely. Check it out when you're done here. This one almost always happens in seated settings: a restaurant, a couch, a car, the two of you side by side or at an angle, close enough that the physical boundary between your space and hers is thin. And then her knee finds yours, or yours finds hers. The point is, she doesn't move away. Contact below the waist in social settings is held by a completely different psychological standard than contact above. We touch each other's arms in conversation without thinking twice. A knee touching a knee, and remaining there, is a choice. The human body has hundreds of opportunities every hour to avoid physical contact. When a woman's leg stays against yours, she has made a choice, dozens of times per minute, not to move. Research from the University of British Columbia found that extended physical contact below the threshold of conscious gesture, what they called sustained ambient touch, is a more reliable predictor of romantic interest than almost any verbal cue. Because verbal cues are constructed, ambient touch is instinctive. She's not thinking about her knee. That's the point. Her thinking mind is in the conversation. Her body is already with you. What most men do, they pull their leg away, quietly, because they're not sure if the contact was intentional. They give her an out she didn't ask for. And in giving her the out, they've communicated, "I'm not sure I want this. I'm not sure I deserve this." What she reads: he's not comfortable here. And comfort, his capacity to be at ease in close physical proximity, is one of the things she is most fundamentally attracted to in a man of any age, but especially a man who has lived some life. Her body was already saying yes. He asked it to say it one more time, and by then, she was tired of asking. She touches her own hair when she's talking to you, or rarer, but when it happens, unmistakable. She reaches out and touches yours. Let's take the first one. A woman touching her own hair in conversation is one of the most documented, most studied, most consistently misread signals in the science of attraction. The literature on this goes back decades, cited across Helen Fisher's work at Rutgers, Dr. Lael Lowndes' research on body language, and multiple replicated studies in social psychology journals. Here's what's happening. The hair touch is a preening gesture. It emerges from the same biological circuitry as a bird adjusting its feathers in the presence of a potential mate. She is not bored. She is not distracted. She is, at a level below her own full awareness, presenting herself, making herself more. Her nervous system has flagged you as someone worth presenting herself to. The touch may be subtle. A strand moved behind the ear, fingers running through the back of the hair, a tuck and retuck of something that doesn't need tucking. But it is consistent. Women who are indifferent in conversation rarely touch their hair. Women who are engaged and attracted do it with a frequency that, once you know what you're looking at, becomes impossible to miss. Now, if she touches your hair, this is in a completely different category. The head and hair are among the most intimate regions of the human body for voluntary touch. Strangers don't touch each other's hair. People touch the hair of those they feel deeply comfortable with, deeply close to, or deeply drawn to. If she reaches out and adjusts something at your temple, or runs her fingers through the side of your hair, or brushes something from your forehead, she is not being maternal. She is being territorial. She is marking you as someone she has permission to touch in private ways. She preens for the man she's choosing. She touches what she's already claimed. I want to pause here because what we're really talking about isn't technique. It's the gap between what's happening and what men believe is happening. If you've ever lost a connection you couldn't explain, there's a guide in the first comment below specifically about how attraction works in the early stages for men over 40. The specific signals, the specific moments, and why most of us were never taught to read them. The link is there when you're ready. Signal 6, the collarbone and neck. Here it is, the one that surprises people. When a woman touches her own collarbone or the front of her neck while talking to you. Slowly, absent-mindedly, fingers resting in the hollow of the throat. She is not self-soothing. She is not fidgeting. She is not nervous in the way anxiety is nervous. She is drawing attention. To herself, for you. The collarbone and the front of the neck are, in evolutionary terms, deeply connected to vulnerability and femininity. Exposing this region, tilting the head, letting the neck lengthen, drawing the fingers to the collarbone, is a gesture that the human female nervous system has been running for hundreds of thousands of years in the presence of a male her biology finds compelling. It is not a decision she makes consciously, but it is a signal she is sending. Dr. Monica Moore, a psychologist at Webster University, conducted one of the most cited studies on female flirting behavior, observing women in natural social settings over hundreds of hours. The neck and collarbone touch appeared in her data as one of the highest frequency and highest reliability signals of attraction that women display. And the frequency increased significantly in the presence of men the women later identified as appealing. When you see this, when her fingers drift to her collarbone and stay there while she's listening to you, or while she's formulating a response, understand what is actually happening. Her body is becoming softer in your presence. It is opening. It is revealing the places it usually keeps covered. Richard, 63, described a first date he'd gone on the previous year. He remembered the woman touching her collarbone through most of the conversation. "I thought she was bored," he told me, "or maybe cold." He didn't ask her on a second date because he read the signal as disengagement. She, according to a mutual friend, had found him deeply attractive and was confused why he never called. She was offering him the softest part of herself. He thought she was checking for a draft. Signal 7, the adjustment touch. She straightens your collar. She removes a piece of lint from your shoulder. She tucks your tag in. She adjusts something on your sleeve. This one is quiet. It can look like nothing. It is everything. The adjustment touch is an act of ownership, not in the possessive sense, in the intimate sense. The people who adjust things on our bodies are our mothers when we were children, our partners when we are in relationship, and our close friends in moments of genuine care. It is not a gesture strangers make. It is not a gesture people make toward those they are indifferent to. When a woman reaches out and touches something on your body with the specific intention of fixing it, she has entered into a private relationship with your physical self. She has given herself permission to care for your appearance. And that permission is not something anyone grants to a man they haven't already privately decided something about. Research from the Journal of Nonverbal Behavior documented what they called grooming gestures in early courtship, the small physical adjustments partners make to each other in the pre-intimate phase. These gestures were found to precede more explicit declarations of interest by an average of several days to weeks. In other words, the grooming gesture comes first. The words come later. The body speaks well before the mouth does. What most men do with the adjustment touch, they say, "Oh, thanks," and move on. They treat it as a favor. They miss the declaration embedded in the gesture. What the aware man does, he slows down. He meets her eyes after she's done it. He says nothing dramatic. Maybe nothing at all. He just holds the moment. He lets her see that he received it as what it was. She didn't touch your collar because it needed fixing. She touched it because her hands wanted to be that close. Signal 8. The goodbye touch watch. Very carefully what happens at the end of the conversation. When the moment comes to part, when one of you has to go, when the evening is ending, when the conversation has reached its natural pause, watch where she touches you, and for how long. A handshake is neutral. A hug that ends quickly is social. But a hug that holds, a hand that stays on your arm as she steps back, a touch that lingers 1 second past what the moment required. This is a woman who doesn't want the contact to end, who is, with her body, extending what her words are obligated to close. The goodbye touch tells you the truth about the entire conversation, because it's the moment when social performance has the least reason to continue. The interaction is ending. There's no longer any social benefit to performing warmth. What remains, what her body does in those final seconds, is what she actually feels. Research on farewell behavior in attraction contexts, less studied than initial courtship but equally revealing, shows that voluntary extended goodbye touch is one of the most reliable post-conversation signals of romantic interest. Women who are interested touch longer and more deliberately at parting. Women who are not, even if the conversation was pleasant, tend to close the contact cleanly and efficiently. Thomas, 58, told me about a woman he'd met at a gallery opening. They'd talked for 45 minutes, and he'd spent the whole time wondering if she was interested or just being polite. At the end of the night, she hugged him, and she held the hug for what he described as too long. And then she stepped back, but her hand stayed on his forearm for another 5 seconds while she looked at him and said she'd really enjoyed the conversation. He called it friendly. He drove home. He didn't ask for her number. She gave hers to the event organizer to pass along. He never got the message. The goodbye that holds is never really a goodbye. It's a question, and most men don't answer it. What we're really building here is a different kind of presence. And presence is learnable. There's a full program on masculine presence and how to hold emotional ground in the moments that matter linked in the first comment below. It's been the thing that shifts it for a lot of men who've gone through it. When you're done here, take a look. Signal 9. The touch that comes when she doesn't need to. This is the most important one, and it has no specific body part. It's the touch that comes when there was no social justification for it. She didn't reach for your arm because she needed to get your attention. She didn't brush your hand because the moment required it. She touched you because she wanted to, because she found a reason, no matter how thin, to close the distance between your skin and hers. That's the signal above all signals, not the location, the logic. Watch the pretext. Women who are drawn to a man find pretexts for touch. They engineer small moments of physical contact, handing you something in a way that allows the fingers to meet, sitting closer than the room requires, leaning in to look at your phone when she could look from where she was. These pretexts are not manipulative. They are instinctive. They are the body finding its way to what it wants, without the mind having to formally authorize it. The clinical term from evolutionary psychology is touch initiation frequency. Studies across multiple cultures consistently find that women who are romantically interested in a man initiate touch more frequently in early interactions, and that they do so through indirect, plausible deniability gestures rather than overt contact. Not because they're playing games, but because the nervous system is cautious. It reaches before the heart is ready to declare. When you start noticing the pretexts, when you see that she keeps finding ways to be physically near you, to make contact that the situation barely justified, you are watching the earliest stages of a woman choosing you, not wondering, not considering, choosing. And this is where we have to talk honestly about what most men do with this information. They pull away. Not because they're uninterested, not because they're cruel, but because something in them, some old wound, some fear of misreading, some discomfort with being wanted, makes the proximity feel like danger, makes the closeness feel like something they need to manage or escape, rather than something they can simply inhabit. And she feels the pullback. She feels it in the way any creature feels when it reaches and is not received. It doesn't break her, but it closes her. The frequency of touch initiatives drops. She recalibrates. She finds a reason to tell herself she was imagining things. And she moves the intensity of her attention somewhere else. Not dramatically, not spitefully, just quietly, the way all living things adjust. when the warmth they were moving toward suddenly turns cool. The men who keep women, the men who build the kinds of connections that sustain decades, are not necessarily the smartest, the wealthiest, or the most conventionally attractive. They are consistently the ones who can be touched without flinching, who can receive closeness without making it awkward, who can hold their ground in intimate moments rather than retreating to the safer territory of the intellectual or the humorous or the carefully managed. The capacity to receive a woman's touch without performance, without anxiety, without making it mean too much or too little, is one of the most attractive things a mature man can demonstrate. Because it says, "I am not afraid of you. I am not afraid of this. I can hold what you offer me." That's not technique, it's character, and it can be built. The deeper truth, we started this conversation talking about signals, about the forearm, the collarbone, the wrist, the goodbye that holds, and those things matter. The specifics matter because specifics are how awareness becomes real. But underneath all of it, there is one truth that I want you to carry out of this video. A woman's touch is almost never neutral. The human hand, extended toward another person in a moment that didn't require it, is one of the most honest things we are capable of. More honest than words, more honest than eye contact, because we lie fluently with our faces, and we lie beautifully with our words. But the body tells the truth at a slower pace than the ego can manage. When she touches you, her body is voting. It has cast a vote in your direction without a campaign speech or a formal declaration. And most men, most good men, most intelligent men, most men who would have been exactly what she was looking for, never receive the vote. They dismiss it, misread it, or retreat from it at exactly the moment they should have simply been still. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have the right words for the moment. You just have to be present enough to receive what's being offered. Stable enough not to flinch. Grounded enough that her touch landing on you doesn't make you disappear into your head. She was already choosing you. Most men just never learn to recognize it. Now you know. One thing before the end. This channel exists without sponsors, without advertising, without outside influence on what gets made. If these conversations have been valuable to you and you want to help keep this space going, there's a voluntary support link in the first comment below. It's not a purchase. It's just a way of saying this kind of work is worth sustaining. Completely up to you, always. And either way, I'm grateful you're here. I want to leave you with a genuine question, and I want your real answer in the comments. Of the 9 signals we covered today, which one have you already experienced, lived through, been in the middle of, and misread? Which one did you dismiss as, "She's just being friendly"? Which one are you now seeing differently? I ask because the comments on this particular conversation are always some of the most honest things I read. Men will say things here they won't say anywhere else, and those stories, real, specific, from life, remind me why this work exists. Leave it below. And if you know a man who is right now in a conversation with someone, wondering, replaying, trying to figure out what she meant, send him this video. Don't explain it, just send it. Sometimes the understanding reaches someone at exactly the moment they needed it. I'll see you in the next one.